A murder mystery set in the 1800s starring Christian Bale. That sounds fascinating to me. The Pale Blue Eye is on Netflix. Let's talk about it. What's up, Netflix fans? Welcome back to my channel. While I haven't loved all of Scott Cooper's films, when I dig one, I really dig it. Hostiles is a great example of that. Wasn't as big on Antlers, but now his new movie, again, Christian Bale is involved. It is The Pale Blue Eye. And let's dive into it. So a world-weary detective is hired to investigate the murder of a West Point cadet, and he enlists one of their own to help unravel the case, a young man the world would come to know as Edgar Allan Poe. Like I said, the director here is Scott Cooper, and this movie is rated R, I think the proper rating for violent content and bloody images. This is a slow-moving film. It's set in the 1800s, and I feel like a lot of these period pieces, especially when one involves a mystery like this, they normally take a while to play out and develop and build characters. And for someone like me, as long as it's an engaging and compelling mystery, I'm up for it. And really, Scott Cooper's vibe, even though I wasn't a big fan of Antlers, I still love his style. That's why Hostiles worked so well for me. It is that slow-moving type of film that builds characters, but it also makes for some fascinating situations, and a movie like this works mostly through the dialogue. Now, visually, it's top-notch. The cinematography is spectacular. I love the color palette to this film. Just the shot selection, the camera placement, exploring these dark and desolate woods, building the atmosphere from the get-go, and how that carries into a final act that is going to bring you shocks and surprises. And I don't want to dive into that part of the story, but I do want to talk about where we start with these two characters. And obviously, you have a character like Edgar Allan Poe, and we all kind of know who he is, what he represents, but in terms of the way that he acts, I didn't know what to expect here, but when I saw the casting of Harry Melling, I'm like, oh yeah, he's going to be, first of all, a little creepy, somewhat energetic, all over the place at times, but there are some lines that come from Poe in this movie, and whether you respond to this performance or not, because it's a very distinct take on Edgar Allan Poe. It is what you're expecting if you see the casting, but if you have no idea who Harry Melling is, you're going to be like, what? This is different, right? But I thought he did a nice job, and some of the dialogue, especially between he and Augustus, Christian Bale's character, is great. It's really great. And there are subtle hints and cues as to what they say to each other that lead us into what we get in the final act as I hit my microphone. And it's a great cast overall. You have Toby Jones in there, Timothy Spall, Robert Duvall, Louis Boynton, who does a great job, but it's highlighted by Melling. And then there's Christian Bale, who, as always, is giving a great performance. It doesn't matter what he's in. You even look at Thor: Love and Thunder, and people didn't love that film. He was shortchanged in the role, but he was good for his 10 minutes of screen time, right? But here, it's up to him to kind of carry us through and wade through some of the moments for me to where the pacing did start to impact the experience. And I think my biggest issue with this movie as I move towards my negatives is I was, and I hate this, it's a lame way to put it, I was a little bored during moments. I was still intrigued, but I was a little bored, because the mystery wasn't as compelling, I think, as it needed to be. And I think one of the big problems is you don't really get to know anyone at the beginning involved in the murder aspect. We just kind of pick up on it. And that does become a little bit intriguing, but it doesn't really become intriguing until the final act of the film. So I have no connection to whose murder he is solving. We learn information as we go, but we still don't really get a lot to feel like these characters mean anything to you. So I thought the buildup was mishandled in a way. And at the beginning, when this cadet's body arrives at the morgue, it becomes more interesting when they discover that this young man's heart has been removed. So there are ulterior motives at play, and all of these leaders, they're trying to figure out what to do, so they turn to Bale's character to solve this, what they now know is a murder. And so Bale's character of Augustus, he finds Poe, as eccentric and interesting as this character is, he realizes he's going to be helpful when it comes to solving this murder. And as they make their way through this mystery, trying to check off boxes as they go, and having interesting and somewhat intimate conversations with the people that they believe could be involved, and then there are those where at first you're like, they don't have anything to do with it, and then you start to question things. So in a way, that makes for a compelling mystery, but again, I do believe the pacing hurts us as we progress from the end of the first act into the second act. I thought the entirety of the second act just moved a bit too slow for me. And again, I'm absolutely okay with that. Some of my favorite movies of the last couple of years are the films that feature slower pacing, but for some reason, this mystery just wasn't as intriguing for me personally. I couldn't get as invested in what Bale was doing. I was more so invested in the performance and the relationship with Edgar Allan Poe. And that, for me, is what got me through those moments that I just didn't care quite as much about. It is obviously all going to be elevated by the visuals and the filmmaking and the cinematography. And that's one thing I can constantly say about Scott Cooper as a director. He's bringing it from a visual perspective. And as unenthralling as the mystery is in the midst of the second act, we get to the third act and really the final 25 minutes of this film, and something happens to where not only the tone shifts just a bit, but the genre starts to move ever so slightly in a different direction. And that's what pulled me back in. It's one of those movies you're kind of like, all right, let's get a little distracted here and there, and then something happens, you're right back in. And that's what I found myself doing in the third act. And honestly, it kind of saved the experience for me, because what happens, it's not only a little unexpected, but viewers are going to be kind of surprised the route they go. And I don't even want to say what genre, because at that point, I'm just kind of telling you what's going to happen. Here's the thing about this movie. Do you like period pieces? Do you like detective stories? Do you like crime-centric films that are set in this time period? If you do, I think you're going to respond to this. You also have to get past the second act. That's going to be a barrier for a lot of people. I promise you there are some great things in the third act, but you have to get there. So I think all audience members are going to vary. Before I give you my personal score, I was very excited for this film. Again, I like the director. Thanks so much for being here. Today's phrase is not a phrase, but it's a question. What is the best recent Christian Bale performance? I'm talking over the last 5 to 6 years. Let me know that in the comments down below. And hey, if you like this review and you want to help the channel, hit the like button. It's the thumbs. That would help. Bale's compelling performance and his chemistry with Melling's Poe will carry viewers through the less enthralling moments in the second act. The mystery takes a while to get there, but the third act will provide some unexpected twists that will elevate what comes prior. And my score is a 62%. This film is on Netflix right now. I believe it dropped in some theaters over the last couple of weekends as well. Unfortunately, I saw it on a small screen, but visually, I think this would be a good movie to see on the big screen because it looks so great. Thanks so much for watching. Come back for more Netflix reviews and my most anticipated TV shows of 2023.